In just a few short years, the UK economy could be on the brink of collapse. With the current trajectory, it's not just a theory, it's a real possibility. Right now, the UK's debt is at an all-time high. Inflation is soaring, and wages are stagnant. Yet the government seems to be asleep at the wheel, unaware of the impending storm. By 2025, the UK could find itself facing an economic crisis unlike anything we've seen in decades. Trade barriers, a shrinking workforce, and chronic underinvestment in key sectors are all factors that could push the economy over the edge. The worst part, many of these problems were completely avoidable. As prices continue to rise and wages remain flat, millions of Brits are struggling to keep their heads above water. With a housing crisis making home ownership a distant dream for many, and political instability making every move uncertain, the future feels more unpredictable than ever. But here's the kicker. What's happening now could just be the tip of the iceberg. The UK's reliance on fragile global supply chains, its failure to tackle climate change, and its mismanagement of resources could mean that the worst is yet to come. What's going to happen when the UK runs out of time to fix these issues? In this video, we're diving into 10 shocking reasons why the UK economy is headed for disaster. You won't want to miss this. Number 1. Brexit Fallout. The long-term impact. Brexit, the UK's decision to leave the European Union, was meant to pave the way for greater independence. However, the reality has proven far more complicated, and the long-term economic consequences are now becoming clear. The immediate disruptions caused by Brexit were widely reported, but the real challenge lies in the lasting economic effects that continue to unfold. First, trade barriers have become a significant problem. The UK now faces increased tariffs and regulatory checks, making it harder for businesses to operate smoothly with their European counterparts. This has resulted in slower supply chains, higher costs for consumers, and decreased competitiveness for UK businesses. The financial sector, once a powerhouse in Europe, has also seen significant shifts. Many companies have relocated parts of their operations to EU countries to avoid regulatory issues, costing the UK jobs and investment. Moreover, foreign direct investment has taken a hit. The UK was once a gateway to Europe for global investors, but now that it's outside the EU, many companies are looking elsewhere for stability and ease of trade. This loss of confidence can have long-lasting effects on the country's economic growth and innovation. Brexit has also created a labour shortage. The free movement of workers between the UK and the EU ended, and industries like agriculture, hospitality, and healthcare have felt the strain of not being able to fill crucial roles. All these factors combined point to a fragile and unpredictable future for the UK economy post-Brexit. This economic isolation could ultimately drag the UK down further, especially as global competition intensifies in the coming years. Number 2. Skyrocketing inflation. The UK is currently grappling with skyrocketing inflation, which is one of the most pressing issues threatening its economic stability. Over the past few years, inflation has surged to levels not seen in decades, and the effects are being felt by consumers, businesses, and the government alike. The most immediate impact of inflation is on the cost of living. Everyday essentials like food, fuel, and energy are becoming increasingly expensive, forcing families to stretch their budgets further. This leads to reduced purchasing power, where people are unable to afford the same goods and services they could just a few years ago. As a result, household debt is rising, and many individuals are finding it harder to make ends meet. For businesses, the situation is no better. The rising cost of raw materials and energy prices are making it harder to maintain profit margins. Companies are being forced to either raise prices, which could lead to a decrease in demand, or absorb the costs, which reduces their profitability. In both cases, economic growth is stunted, and the business environment becomes less predictable. The government also faces challenges in controlling inflation. As prices continue to rise, there is pressure to increase wages, but this can further fuel inflation in a vicious cycle. The Bank of England has tried to counter this by raising interest rates, but higher borrowing costs can slow down investment and consumer spending, further slowing the economy. Ultimately, if inflation remains high, it could lead to a wage price spiral, where workers demand higher pay to to cope with rising costs, and businesses raise prices to cover those wage increases, making the economy less competitive globally. Number 3. Stagnant wages and declining productivity. In the UK, the issue of stagnant wages has become a major concern for the economy. While the cost of living has been steadily increasing, wages have remained largely stagnant, meaning that workers are not earning enough to keep up with rising prices. This wage stagnation is particularly troubling because it undermines the purchasing power of individuals and households, leading to a decline in consumer spending, a key driver of economic growth. Even though inflation is skyrocketing, many workers in the UK are seeing little to no real wage growth. As a result, workers are feeling squeezed as they are forced to spend more of their income on basic necessities like food, energy, and housing. This not only creates financial strain on families, but also has a broader impact on the economy as consumer confidence drops and people begin to tighten their purse strings. At the same time, the UK's productivity levels are also on the decline. Despite advancements in technology and infrastructure, the output per worker has failed to improve significantly. This is a worrying trend, as productivity is a major factor in determining long-term economic growth. If the UK's workforce isn't becoming more efficient, businesses will struggle to stay competitive, and economic growth will be stunted. The combination of stagnant wages and declining productivity creates a toxic cycle. As wages fail to keep up with inflation, consumers have less to spend, leading to lower demand for goods and services. Meanwhile, businesses face higher costs, but their productivity isn't improving enough to offset these pressures. This cycle makes it harder for the UK economy to break free from its current challenges, ultimately putting the country at a significant disadvantage on the global stage. Number 4. The housing crisis. The UK's housing crisis has become one of the most urgent economic challenges of our time. Home ownership, once an achievable goal for many, is now out of reach for millions of people, especially the younger generation. The rising cost of homes, paired with a lack of affordable housing, has created an economic divide that's growing wider by the year. This has deep implications not just for individuals, but for the broader economy as well. In major cities like London, Manchester, and Birmingham, property prices have soared to astronomical levels, while wages have failed to keep up with these increases. As a result, many young people are either forced to remain in rental housing or live with their parents far longer than previous generations. The lack of affordable homes is pushing people to the fringes of cities, further exacerbating issues like transportation and commuting times. Additionally, the housing market is increasingly becoming a playground for investors rather than a way for individuals to build wealth. Many properties are bought as investment assets, sitting empty or being rented out at unaffordable rates, leaving working-class families struggling to find a place to live. This trend is further inflating prices and making it harder for first-time buyers to enter the market. The housing crisis is also linked to the wider economy. When people can't afford to buy homes, it impacts consumer spending, as people have less money to spend on other goods and services. This, in turn, slows economic growth. Moreover, with rising rents, many people are left with less disposable income, which creates a drag on the economy as a whole. Ultimately, the lack of affordable housing is a critical issue that needs to be addressed if the UK hopes to avoid a prolonged period of economic stagnation. Number 5. A shrinking workforce. The UK is facing a demographic crisis that could cripple its economy in the coming years. A shrinking workforce. As the baby boomer generation continues to retire, the number of people entering the workforce is not growing fast enough to replace them. This aging population is creating a labour shortage, which has serious economic consequences. The decline in birth rates and fewer younger people entering the workforce is exacerbating the problem. With fewer workers, the economy faces reduced productivity and a lack of innovation. Sectors like healthcare, social care, and construction are already struggling to fill vacancies, and as the population ages, the demand for these services will only increase. This creates a vicious cycle where more people need care, but there aren't enough workers to provide it. Additionally, the retirement age is increasing, but not at a pace that matches the growing demand for workers. As older workers leave the workforce, many are taking valuable knowledge and experience with them, and the younger workforce lacks the skills and experience to fill those gaps. This creates a skills gap, where employers struggle to find qualified workers to meet their needs. The lack of skilled labour also impacts industries like technology, where innovation and expertise are essential for growth. This demographic shift also places enormous pressure on the government's social services and pension systems. With more retirees and fewer workers paying taxes, the government may face a funding shortfall, which could lead to higher taxes or reduced services. Ultimately, the UK's shrinking workforce is a ticking time bomb, and if action isn't taken soon, it will lead to severe economic stagnation and decline. Number 6. Chronic underinvestment in key sectors. One of the most significant factors holding the UK economy back is chronic underinvestment in key sectors that are essential for long-term growth. Over the years, the country has failed to adequately invest in crucial industries like technology, green energy, and infrastructure. This underinvestment is creating a drag on the economy, limiting future potential and leaving the UK vulnerable to global competitors. Technology is perhaps the most glaring example. While nations like the US, China, and Germany are pouring resources into innovation and tech development, the UK has fallen behind. Many tech startups and entrepreneurs are choosing to relocate abroad to access better funding, infrastructure, and talent. Without a strong technology sector, the UK risks falling behind in the global race for digital transformation, which is the future of nearly every industry. Similarly, the UK's green energy initiatives have been sluggish, and investment in renewable energy sources like wind, solar, and hydropower is far below what's needed to meet future energy demands. As the world shifts towards sustainability, countries with advanced green technologies will dominate, while the UK could find itself stuck relying on outdated, polluting energy systems. This not only affects the economy, but also job creation in these growing sectors. Finally, the UK's infrastructure is in desperate need of modernisation. Ageing roads, railways, and airports hinder the movement of goods and people, increasing costs and decreasing efficiency. Lack of investment in infrastructure can make the UK less attractive to both domestic and foreign investors. If these critical sectors continue to be neglected, the UK will struggle to maintain economic growth and competitiveness, ensuring that its economy remains stuck in the past. Number 7. Rising debt levels. The UK's national debt has reached alarming levels, and it poses a serious risk to the economy's future. As of 2025, the UK's debt is continuing to climb, and the unsustainable levels of borrowing are putting tremendous pressure on the government and taxpayers alike. With debt servicing costs taking up an increasing portion of the national budget, vital areas such as healthcare, education, and social services may face funding cuts, ultimately leading to a reduced quality of life for citizens. The main driver behind this rising debt is government spending, particularly in response to global crises like the COVID-19 pandemic and the cost of living crisis. While these efforts may have been necessary in the short term, the long-term consequences of increasing debt are now coming to the forefront. The interest payments on the debt alone are growing rapidly, leaving the government with fewer resources to invest in vital areas that could stimulate economic growth, such as infrastructure or education. Moreover, the UK's debt to GDP ratio is dangerously high. When debt grows faster than the economy, it creates a debt trap where the country struggles to service its obligations. This can lead to a loss of investor confidence as financial markets start to doubt the UK's ability to repay its debts. A loss of confidence could result in higher borrowing costs, further exacerbating the problem. If the government doesn't take immediate steps to address this issue, the UK could find itself in a fiscal crisis with rising taxes, spending cuts, and economic stagnation. The longer the debt remains unchecked, the more difficult it will be to escape this financial vicious cycle. The future of the UK economy hinges on how it manages its debt in the coming years. Number 8. Political instability. Political instability is becoming an increasingly pressing issue in the UK, and it's taking a serious toll on the economy. The country's political landscape has become highly fragmented, with deep divisions between political parties, leading to frequent leadership changes, unsteady policies, and lack of long-term direction. This uncertainty is unsettling for investors, businesses, and consumers alike, making it difficult for the UK to move forward with the clear and consistent economic strategies it needs. The constant political gridlock in Westminster, marked by debates over Brexit, trade agreements, and economic reforms, has led to delays in critical policy implementation. As a result, investment confidence is dwindling, with many businesses and foreign investors hesitant to commit to long-term projects in the UK due to the unpredictable political environment. Companies thrive in stability, but when the government shifts priorities based on political pressures, economic decisions become erratic and unreliable. Moreover, this political instability has fostered a decline in public trust in government institutions. People feel disconnected from the political system, which often results in protests, strikes, and public discontent. These social disruptions can have a direct impact on the economy, as businesses are forced to contend with labour unrest, slow decision-making, and inefficiency in public services. This climate of political uncertainty also makes it harder for the UK to negotiate favourable deals on the global stage. As the world moves toward more collaborative international relations, the UK risks being left behind if it cannot present a unified, stable front. If political instability continues, the UK's economic future will remain clouded, with businesses and citizens alike facing ongoing uncertainty and hardship. Number 9. Global supply chain vulnerabilities. The UK's global supply chain vulnerabilities have become a significant issue, especially in light of recent disruptions caused by events like the pandemic and geopolitical tensions. The country's reliance on imports for everything from food to manufactured goods has left it highly exposed to disruptions in international trade. As supply chains remain fragile, businesses and consumers are feeling the strain of rising prices, shortages, and delays. The UK's position as a major global trading hub has been undermined by several factors, including Brexit and logistical bottlenecks. After leaving the EU, the UK encountered new trade barriers and customs checks, slowing down the flow of goods. This has resulted in delays at ports, increased costs, and reduced product availability. Many businesses that relied on seamless trade within the European Union are now facing higher operational costs, forcing them to either raise prices or cut back on services. Additionally, the COVID-19 pandemic exposed just how fragile global supply chains can be. With factories in key countries like China and Vietnam shutting down, the UK found itself struggling to source critical products. As demand surged for essential goods like electronics, medical supplies, and food items, prices soared and availability dropped. This supply-demand imbalance continues to reverberate through the economy, with shortages in various sectors becoming more common. As global trade becomes increasingly unpredictable due to climate change, political instability, and economic uncertainty, the UK's supply chain vulnerabilities could worsen. If the country doesn't address these weaknesses, it risks further economic stagnation and reduced competitiveness on the global stage. The reliance on fragile global networks makes the UK more susceptible to external shocks, and without diversification and resilience in its supply chains, the economy will continue to struggle. Number 10. Climate change and environmental challenges. Climate change is no longer a distant issue. It's an urgent economic threat that the UK can no longer afford to ignore. The country is facing a range of environmental challenges that could severely disrupt its economy in the coming decades. From rising sea levels to extreme weather events, the economic cost of climate change is already becoming evident, and it's only expected to escalate. One of the most pressing concerns is the risk of flooding in key areas of the UK. With rising sea levels and more intense rainfall, critical infrastructure, including cities, transport networks, and agricultural land, are at risk. The cost of flood prevention measures combined with the damage caused by flooding, could run into billions of pounds. This threatens both property values and local economies, particularly in coastal regions and river valleys. Another significant issue is the transition to a green economy. While the UK has committed to net zero carbon emissions by 2050, this transition is expensive and complex. It requires large-scale investments in renewable energy, green technologies, and sustainable infrastructure. Without adequate investment in these areas, the UK could find itself struggling to keep up with the global shift towards sustainability, ultimately losing out on economic opportunities in green industries. Moreover, climate-related disruptions such as droughts, heat waves, and wildfires can have a devastating effect on agriculture, food production, and overall productivity. As global temperatures rise, crop yields may decrease, leading to food shortages and price inflation. Ultimately, the economic costs of climate change are already mounting, and without decisive action to mitigate these risks, the UK faces a future where environmental disasters and the costs of transition weigh heavily on its economy. As we've seen, the UK economy is standing on the edge of a precipice, with many challenges looming on the horizon. If the country doesn't act quickly, the consequences could be severe, affecting everything from daily living to long-term stability. These 10 reasons highlight just how fragile the situation is, but it's not too late for change. The question is, will the UK be able to make the necessary shifts before it's too late? If you found this analysis eye-opening, we'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think is the most urgent issue the UK needs to address? Drop your opinions in the comments below. We're eager to hear your take on the state of the economy. And hey, we put a lot of effort into creating these in-depth videos, so if you want to stay updated on all the latest economic breakdowns, just hit that subscribe button. It's just one click, but it helps us bring you more valuable content, so don't miss out. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.